Hello, this is Mike Sanders from NTI, the leaders in helping Americans with disabilities back in the workplace. I'm here with Ryan Martin, president of the Ryan Martin Foundation, professional international wheelchair basketball athlete, and member of the Governor's Advisory Council at the Department of Public Health. Hey Ryan, thanks for joining us.
Mike, thank you. Thanks for having me.
I just wanted to jump right into the questions. Over your lifetime, you had a ton of different accomplishments, but what is Ryan Martin all about?
I think that I don't look at it as necessarily accomplishments. I look at it as more just having good fortune or being blessed to have had some tremendous opportunities and being able to take advantage of the opportunities that I've been given. I think right now at this point in my life, especially with the Ryan Martin Foundation, my goal is to help other individuals have similar opportunities and not necessarily, and I'm sure we will get into this as we go deeper into some of these questions, but my thing with the individuals I work with through my foundation and my speaking engagements is I always want to push the idea of education. And I think that for me, that was the biggest key to allowing me to be successful, was being able to go to school and accomplish those things, but also make those connections for different opportunities after school. And so I think, especially when I deal with individuals with disabilities, who come to my camps or that I speak for, it's something that I really, really reiterate, that the importance of education. And I hope that my story inspires other individuals to push the envelope and, go beyond what other people think and find their own ways to create success.
Tell me a little bit about that path, just for people who don't know a lot about the Ryan Martin Foundation. You started off by going to school, and then how did you get into becoming an athlete?
I grew up in a rather large family. There was 12 of us. My parents adopted children with special needs. And so we just played sports all the time, whether it was wiffle ball, basketball, football, you name it, we did it. I grew up in a really competitive household. And for me, being a person with a disability, I think for me, I found sports a way for me to fit in, and then also to stick out for the right reasons. I went to a school where I was the only individual with a disability, and I had trouble, fitting in and different things like that. And so sports for me was an outlet where I could be successful, and I could carve out my own niche, fight my challenges, or despite my limitations, I was able to be acknowledged and recognized for doing something well.
You started doing basketball in high school or earlier than that?
I probably started playing wheelchair basketball when I was 14, and I played with an adult team, the Connecticut Spoke Benders. And then I went on to play with a junior team out of Boston, kind of similar to the way AAU basketball is run for able-bodied athletes, that structure. And I was able to get an opportunity to play in college, which was something for me coming from such a large family. I never knew if I would be able to, attend college, and I wasn't really academically inclined through high school, and I really struggled with learning until I learned how best I learned. So I was really, really blessed that basketball gave me something to really strive for and gave me that focus. And I mean, candidly, it helped me get into school because people gave me extra help because they saw I was driven and really, really worked with me, especially through some of my academic deficiencies.
So it sounds like you had a lot of support around you, both academically and through sports.
My family was always very, very supportive, and when you grow up in a household like I grew up in, it gives me a tremendous sense of pride to talk about my family, but also gave me a tremendous sense of motivation to have siblings who were dealing with their own individual challenges. It allowed me to put things into context and things into perspective. And I think that became my vehicle to be successful, using that motivation to realize, the effort that some of my siblings were putting in to be successful, that I felt like I had no excuses. Like they were doing it, why couldn't I?
Was there any doubters on your road to success?
Yeah, I think so, especially, in both arenas. I think from an athletic standpoint, yeah, absolutely. I wasn't the most gifted natural athlete, and so I felt like I really, really had to work to be successful at it. And I always quote Malcolm Gladwell with, the 10,000 hours of work before you consider yourself an expert. And I put in the sweat equity to college. There was individuals who said, hey, I wasn't worth the scholarship. And then when I went over to Europe, there were people saying, well, why is Ryan overplaying here professionally? He's not good enough, and different things like that. But I mean, I've always been motivated by the idea of being told I can't do something. And I think a lot of times individuals with disabilities were often told we can't be successful due to stereotypes or perceived lack of abilities based on different challenges that we have. And I think the most successful thing a person can do is take those challenges and kind of galvanize those challenges. Use that as your fuel, use that as your motivation. I know in the academic sense, quick kind of anecdote, I was told like really early on that, I wasn't college material, I wasn't college level, and I remember sitting in IEPs and watching the teachers kind of cajole a message of, well, he tries really hard, but it's just not for him. And that really kind of frustrated me because I thought I could figure out how to learn and I could figure out how to prepare myself to be academically successful. I could, but I had to see that in myself before I could start to hope other people would see that.
During that whole entire time period, what kind of sacrifices did you have to make?
Yeah, let me take the academic side. Is that, for me to play overseas and play professionally was never in my wildest of dreams. It really never was. I thought if I could attend a university and get a degree, that I could get a job and I would have a shot. Whatever I did from there was on me. And so the idea that I could play professionally was never crossed my mind. But what I did realize is, okay, I have individuals who are invested in me financially, from a time standpoint. For me to be successful academically, I have to come away with a degree. Much like I tell a lot of individuals that I work with who come to my sports camps and different things like that, say, listen, you have to be successful academically because the challenges that you're facing, certain jobs are going to be really, really difficult for you to do, manual labor, different things like that. And I think with the global workforce and the challenge, jobs are becoming more high tech. And education is now not a luxury. Being bilingual is not a luxury. It's one of those things that you need to be able to do to be successful. But I think you have to believe you can be successful prior to you achieving those things. And from an athlete standpoint, I think every athlete, even the your $1 million athletes that you see on TV and different things like that, or Paralympic athletes who, are trying to get that gold medal or trying to make that USA team or that national team. I think you have to live it. For me, when I was playing professionally overseas, it was up first thing in the morning and you got some sort of workout in, whether it was a 2-hour basketball workout or whether it was some weights or whether it was jumping in the pool. I lived my life around the idea that I was going to be the best basketball player I could. I didn't take vacations unless I knew I could, at least get a workout in, once a day, get up before everybody else did. I would never, everything that I put into my body, whether it was supplements or food, I was always conscientious of, okay, well, how is that going to affect me when it comes time for me to play my game and do my sport? And so it's an all-encompassing thing, and it becomes your lifestyle. And, I think anybody who's dedicated to their craft, whether their craft is, athletically related or not, can relate to that.
These are some of the principles that you teach at the Ryan Martin Foundation, correct?
Yeah, I feel like I've been very, very fortunate in the sense that the opportunities I've had, chance to play professionally is such a rare thing. And then I think when you add in the fact that I'm an individual with a disability, some of the opportunities I've gotten, I feel, have been very fortunate to receive those opportunities. But at the same time, I feel like my work ethic and my drive to be successful has allowed me to achieve and earn those things. But I tell kids all the time that I work with, and most of my camps, whether they're in the U.S. or over in Europe, deal with predominantly middle school, high school, junior high school kids. And I tell them that, listen, your path can be different. I'm not expecting every one of the kids who come to my basketball camp to be a professional wheelchair athlete or be a Paralympian or, different things like that. But I do tell them they have to find a way to carve out whatever their dream is and be successful. And I tell them, each of them, that their path to success and their view of success is different. But I think the road to success, there's a lot of similarities regardless of what you want to do. I mean, I tell kids, you don't want to be an athlete, but you want to be a musician, or you want to be a doctor, or you want to be a teacher, you want to be a lawyer, whatever you want to be, the dedication and the need of education doesn't change. Like there are some guiding principles to regardless of what your end goal is.
I know that we alluded to a lot of the components of the Ryan Martin Foundation, but can you tell us a little bit more about it and why you established it?
The Ryan Martin Foundation is a nonprofit foundation where my goal, to be honest, was very, very simple. I wanted to create sports programs for kids with disabilities in that Connecticut area because I wanted to create opportunities that I didn't think were available at the time. I didn't think there was a lot of athletic opportunities for kids with disabilities in Connecticut, where I'm from, that challenged the kids. I thought there was a lot of opportunities that were maybe tokenistic and weren't looking at the whole picture. And for me, I've always said adaptive sports is kind of the buy-in, and the wheelchair basketball is the buy-in. That's how kids come to camp. But I want to get them talking about education, talking about employment, talking about independence, because at the end of the day, whether they can make a basket or not isn't that important to me. But if they can take some of those things that they've learned, some of those intangibles, and apply it to something that they want to accomplish to be successful, then I think I've won. And so that's really my passion at this point, is to kind of help people unlock whatever they need to unlock to be successful. And I never thought the Ryan Martin Foundation would expand as much as it has. I think the first time that we dreamt of the idea, myself and my board, to let's expand out to Europe, let's expand out to other cities in the U.S. I was shocked that it was as well received. And, the biggest challenge we have now is to continue to be able to offer all the programs for free and go to all the cities that want us to come run programs there. It's a great problem to have, but that is the challenge, and I feel tremendously honored that my vision has been able to be successful in a lot of different cities and working with a lot of different kids, and hoping that some of the principles that we're trying to teach through basketball can transmit into other areas beyond sports.
Sounds like you're hitting your goal and excelling at it tremendously. How many cities and countries are you in?
We've been in Spain consistently for the last few years. We're working with a junior program out of there, and I run a camp there every summer, 1 to 2 camps, 5 or 6 different U.S. cities, and some rotate based on scheduling and different things like that. I would love to expand the foundation into other European countries, whether it would be Germany or France or different countries where I've had the chance to play and make some different connections. I think the challenges individuals with disabilities face as far as beyond the sports realm is universal. It doesn't necessarily have to be just here in the U.S. or just here in Europe. And so I think there is a need for programs like mine, and not to say that my program is the only one doing these things, but I'm always happy to support different organizations that are trying to help individuals with disabilities live a more independent life, push the idea of education, and things that I think are really kind of the pillars for them to be successful long term.
Do you find that disability is different, or the perception of disability is different between the United States and how it's perceived in Europe?
I think so. In my personal opinion, and I have no statistical data or any studies to back this up, I feel in my experiences in Europe, it's a little bit further behind. I think the United States is very fortunate with the adoption of the ADA and our commitment to diversity, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in the classroom. And I say the ADA goes a long way, and its guidelines is not law. And so there are some issues with that. But what it does is it shows there is a commitment to basic human rights and unlocking the American dream for individuals with disabilities that I feel, especially being someone who got to live the majority of my teenage years and my adult years in a ADA-friendly society, I think that was a tremendous blessing for me. Can't even get into a building, let's talk about accessibility for a second. How can you begin to able to access education? How do you begin to able to access employment and different things like that? The door's got to be open literally before you're able to do different things. And I think getting back to your question about my experiences in Europe, I felt the accessibility from getting to different places was difficult at times. I think they're a little bit further behind than we are in the idea of embracing diversity, embracing individuals with disabilities as individuals that can contribute to the social fabric of their society.
Since you've started up the Ryan Martin Foundation, have you noticed a difference in the kids who are coming through your program because of that change in the mental society within the United States?
You know what, I think, and I wrote a blog about this, I think sports is a tremendous vehicle for change. When you look at, in our history, Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier, I think that changed a lot of things beyond baseball. And I think the adaptive sports movement and just the fact that it's now more mainstream, kids can turn on NBC and watch the finals of the Paralympic wheelchair basketball, or watch track and field, or watch the Blade Runners run. I think that opened kids' eyes from a younger age at what they're capable of and what sort of opportunities are out there. So I think that's an awesome thing. I think that the Paralympic movement and the adaptive sports movement has opened kids' eyes to, oh wow, I could put USA across my chest, or I could win a gold medal, or I could win a bronze medal or silver medal, whatever the case may be. And I think kids now dream with their eyes wide open, in the sense that they're seeing this for the first time, that they watch TV, they're watching individuals with disabilities being portrayed on movies and different things like that. I would argue not enough, but I think they come to me now, when I see them, more with a vision of what is possible. And I remember as a kid not seeing some of the things that they get to see now. And so I'm hopeful that makes for individuals with disabilities who can become more independent, who can seek education, who can become gainfully employed. And I hope the Ryan Martin Foundation is a small part of that for the individuals that I see in our year-round programs, and then also our summer programs.
As you know, NTI, we help out Americans with disabilities get back in the workplace. So I thought I'd throw this question out to you. For candidates and other athletes, sometimes a goal like getting a job, it seems so insurmountable. What kind of advice can you give to them to keep on striving for that goal and not give up?
I think any sort of goal, and I mean, using the reference of employment that you're discussing, it is a challenge, and I don't think it comes easy. And I think just persevering, there's a ton of stories where I'll hear with individuals with disabilities will be qualified, and it will take them several years. A friend of mine is a school teacher, and she was overqualified, dual master's degree, bilingual. She would go into interview after interview and get declined, but she stuck with it. And she knew that it wasn't a question of if, it was a question of when one of these schools gave her a shot. And she knew when she got that opportunity, she was going to make the most of that. And I think, the two things that I would suggest is being persistent in your passions. If you really want to get back into the workforce and do that, do everything you can. Get your education to a point where you do that. Be able to, because transportation oftentimes is a barrier for individuals with disabilities getting back into the workplace. Be persistent in your passions and chase that down. And just when you get that first opportunity, make all you can of that opportunity. The very first time I went overseas, I was on a one-year basketball contract to play. And I remember the insatiable hunger I had to be more successful. Okay, you're only going to give me a one-year contract. Okay, next time you sign, you're going to pay twice as much, and it's going to be a long-term contract. And so I think a lot of times when the door is open, it's a matter of capitalizing that and making sure that next door gets open for you.
And what kind of advice do you wish people offered to you regarding your disability over your lifetime?
I had a lot of individuals give me great advice. In hindsight, it's always 20/20 in the sense of you never know what's going to sink in or different things like that. I think the thing that I've learned in life and the thing that people have told me along the way that maybe I didn't always realize, but I adamantly believe in now, is the idea it's not a question of your disability. It's a question of the abilities you bring by your challenges. So I think everyone has a disability. I do a lot of public speaking at schools to kind of talk about like anti-bullying and diversity messages. And later this week, I'm going to give a keynote on diversity. And one of my main themes in that is that, hey, we all have our challenges. It's what you do with your challenges that defines how successful you will be. You let your challenges become, oh, I got declined. Using your employment reference again, like, I got declined again for a job, man. I didn't get a second interview, or, oh, I didn't get the position I wanted or the salary I wanted. If it stops you from driving forward, well, then that's the problem. Your disability isn't the problem. There's nothing wrong with having to work harder to get something. It's just a matter of staying consistent in that effort to achieve that goal.
So what's your next challenge?
My next challenge is I'm working alongside the NC2A to create more more wheelchair basketball programs at universities and colleges within the Northeast. As I mentioned that, kind of at the beginning of this, I always feel like education is the key thing for individuals with disabilities, and so I'm hoping that this NC2A initiative will kind of create widespread reform, much like Title IX did, in the sense that it'll allow individuals with disabilities to attend college and maybe use sports to help them, get into college or finish and get a degree, which hopefully will lead to long-term success. So between that and a pretty aggressive public speaking schedule, and then also obviously the nonprofit, I try to be at every single camp, every single function that my nonprofit does. I try to be there because that's what I want to be hands-on. I want to be able to talk to kids. I want to be able to talk to parents and help them navigate through those issues, education, employment, driving, independence, you name it. All those things keep me quite busy currently.
We're going to start wrapping up. But are there any additional questions that you wish I asked you or last comments you'd like to share? If there's anyone who wants to get in touch with the Ryan Martin Foundation, if there's a kid out there who wants to be a part of this or a family member who knows of somebody who would definitely benefit from it, how could they get in touch with you?
The thing is, I always tell them to go to my website, which is ryanmartinfoundation.org, me an email. I do my very best. I don't know how many come in a day, but I do my best to answer them, or somebody from my board answers them. And I'm always willing to help out. And even if I'm a point of reference in the sense of individuals wanting to know, how to access different things, always happy to help. So shoot me an email, and always happy to help.
That's fantastic. Once again, I'd like to thank Ryan Martin for joining us today. And also as an end note, if you'd like a chance to see Ryan in person, he's going to be a keynote speaker for the NTI's 31 Nights of Light event at the Prudential Building in Boston, Massachusetts from 4:30 to 7:30 p.m. It's free to the public, and we hope to see you there. Thanks again, Ryan.
No problem, Mike. Thank you.